Scared for reals.
Hey, it's Chris O'Neill.
And Adam Perry.
We've got quite the cult classic that we're going to dissect, discuss in a lot of detail. 1979, Phantasm was released.
Yes. The cult classic is definitely the term here.
$300,000 budget and it made $22 million. That's pretty good.
That's incredible,
yeah.
Especially for 1979.
Right, and the guy had only made 2 other movies. And
Don Coscarelli.
Yeah,
Yep.
Don Coscarelli. And third time's a charm.
Yeah, yep.
So I'm going to let you take the lead on this one, Adam. You've seen this movie more times than I have, so if you want to start the discussion, go ahead.
Basically, it's about it's such a weird, unique play because we have interdimension play.
Right.
We have the tall man. We got we don't really know what's going on, but basically, it takes place at a mortuary,
a demonic
mortuary that doubles as a portal to another dimension, and we have basically people kidnapping bodies, killing people, and bring them to this other dimension.
We got a kind of an interesting combination here of A Nightmare on Elm Street, which would come out 5 years later.
Yep.
And then you have like a body snatcher kind of thing to it,
right?
And then you've got kind of like zombie-like dwarfs. He takes these dead bodies, shrinks their bodies into they're like 3 feet tall and turns them into zombie dwarfs.
Right.
I mean, what an interesting concept. I mean, it's just the story. There is a plot involving 2 brothers.
Yep.
Both their parents have died, and then come to find out, it's basically from the younger brother's point of view, and that's what Don has stated in many occasions, that this is geared for the 10 to 13-year-old boys.
Right.
And it's a nightmare. He literally, at the end of the movie, he wakes up, it's a nightmare, and in the dream, he's kind of having his brother help him out, but his brother's dead.
Yeah.
That's the big plot twist.
Right.
It's like, where in the world did that happen? It's kind of like it's very quick. You see the gravestone, you're like, huh? Mm-hmm. When did he die?
Yeah.
But it is an interesting movie. If you really think about it too hard, you'll see all sorts of holes. Because the interesting thing when I was delving in, doing the research on this, it was originally 3 hours long.
Yeah, and it took them a long time to film this. I mean, again, we're talking
several years.
This is, the budget came from, this was GoFundMe before GoFundMe.
His dad pretty much funded the whole thing. His mom was actually, come to find out, an established author.
Yes.
She had several published books. So I think that's where most of the money came from.
That and just fundraising. And, again, this is...
And she did the costumes, by the way.
Yeah. You see the beautiful shots of the mausoleum itself.
Right.
I mean, it's literally only that hallway. That was the set. I mean, it was just that one hallway. And again, this is independent filming on the weekend when everybody's available.
Right.
At its best.
Yeah, I mean, we'd hear about, Kevin Smith maxing out credit cards, Tarantino on a, very thin budget and everything like that. But this is before all of that. This is kind of like he's following in the reins, kind of like George A. Romero in a bit, because he struggled so much and, making commercials just to make money for the Night of the Living Dead,
Right.
And so this is very independent filmmaking.
It's very independent, and it also just goes to show what great storytelling can do. Because, I mean, it's such a low budget. It was, made... shoestring's not even the word. Again, this is like me when I was a 13-year-old kid with a camcorder running around in my backyard. This is literally, they just managed to make a professional-looking movie.
Right.
I mean, all the actors, with the exception of Angus Scrimm, there was really no professionals in this movie.
Right.
Everything was friends and buddies.
Well, and he used a lot of the same cast from his other 2 movies as well.
Yeah.
But going from 3 hours to 90 minutes, I mean, he cut half of it out. And it'd be really cool if somehow we get that work print, because, I mean, it'd be kind of curious to see what that looked like. I heard that a lot of padding and and a lot of it's overbloated and not necessary to the end product. But
Right.
There are times in the film where it jumps around really quickly, and you have to kind of like, okay, kind of adjust yourself.
Right.
It's style over substance. That's basically what this film's all about, and obviously it has a lot to do with grief. But if you follow that logic, the lady in lavender doesn't make any sense. And then, and then if you go by the nightmare logic, it does make more sense.
Right. Just nailing down the point of just, what great storytelling can do.
Right.
I mean, we got two of the most iconic things in horror out of this little low budget movie, which is the iconic tall man.
Yes.
I mean, everybody knows the tall man, whether you've seen the movie or not. So it's like growing up and going to the video store and looking at all the horror movie boxes. You've never seen Jason, but you know who Jason is.
Right.
Tall man is in that category, and one of the most iconic horror weapons, the sphere.
Yeah, the sphere that sticks in your head and then it literally squirts all your blood out.
Yeah.
It's very interesting weapon.
It's like a drill. It's like a reverse drill and pump.
And apparently, Chris Corelli had nightmares as a kid. Being attacked by spheres.
Yeah.
And a tall guy following him, apparently.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is a nightmare based on a nightmare.
Right. And I have a book, and I'll talk about the book a little bit later, but it's just so funny when, you're reading about the making of this movie, and like the visuals of the sphere flying is really awesome.
Yeah.
And then you find out they're like, well, how do we make this fire? They'll just throw it down the hallway.
Yeah. And the sound matches up with it. And it's got like a weird reddish tint to it at times.
Yeah. So it's just funny. Like, you would think that they did some really fancy camera ninja trick work. No, just throw it down the hallway and film it.
Right. For such a low budget movie, it seems like it cost more than what it really did.
Yeah. Yes. And this is, again, a testament to using every dime you have to its fullest.
Right. Don't
not wasting a cent.
Not wasting 1 cent. I mean, I wonder what the 3-hour version is. I mean, we'll keep wondering that probably forever, because it just doesn't seem like it's going to get released. Mm-hmm. I mean, you never know. I mean, in 2029 and its 50th anniversary, we could get lucky and get like a work release print. It doesn't seem like it's a lost entity like whatever happened to the Wicker Man or the Magnificent Ambersons or Greed or any of those other, like, what if we had more footage from this movie? It seems like it's there. Don maybe just didn't like it or whatever. I know Kubrick literally, from what I understand with The Shining, that ending with Shelley Duvall in the hospital and everything, she's meeting with the guy who runs the hotel, that was scrapped, and he gave it to Warner Brothers, but some people say he destroyed it. So
really,
yeah, who knows? But I mean, it is a style over substance movie, though, because again, if you think really hard, it's like, well, all right, certain things don't add up and don't make sense, but it is an interesting ride, that's for sure.
Right.
And it's literally a nightmare movie before A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Right.
Because, basically, it's like, it seemed like the kid created the tall man in his dreams to kind of deal with the grief that he had. He's all alone.
Right.
Come to find out, literally, he's the only one left, and his brother's buddy's taking care of him, which is that is pretty cool.
Right.
But still, it's like, man, poor kid.
Yeah. He
literally created this tall man to deal with his own grief and try to overcome his grief.
Mm-hmm.
But tall man wins at the end, kind of.
Kind of. Well, I mean, you like you said, you think it's all make-believe, and then surprise, maybe it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and we wouldn't have had Phantasm 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Whatever came, yeah. All right. So, for those of you, again, this is spoiler alert, we'll go through some of the plot here and plot points.
Well, with a 45-year-old movie, you don't really need to worry about.
I know,
spoiler
but
alerts.
you know how people get upset. If you haven't seen it, you should. I mean, if you're any sort of horror fan, you should have seen
this is
movie
like
at least once.
If you are a diehard horror fan, this is like essential.
Sure. Yeah.
So go ahead. All
right. So this our story opens up with a woman in lavender with a character named Tommy. And they're in the Morningside Cemetery, and they are getting it on, Chris.
Again, that getting it on in a cemetery is a red flag.
Yeah.
You probably shouldn't be doing that.
And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Tommy is stabbed, and we find that the woman in lavender is actually the tall man.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing.
Angus Grimm.
Yeah.
We will talk about him later because what an interesting guy he is and was in real life.
Yeah.
So at the funeral, Tommy's friends, Jody and Reggie, believe he committed suicide.
Right.
Jody is our main character. He is a 13-year-old boy, and he secretly...
Michael's the 13-year-old. Jody is his middle brother. And
I'm sorry. Yes.
Tommy is the older one that got killed at the beginning.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. All right. So Mike secretly observes the tall man placing Tommy's heavy casket, seemingly with no effort at all, back into a hearse. Instead of completing the burial, he brings it back to the mortuary.
Yeah, and those hearses are heavy as heck.
Yeah, the caskets are heavy as heck.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
The casket. Yeah, it's those things you can't lift by yourself.
Yeah. Mike then goes to a fortune teller to tell her what he saw. She has him stick his hand in a box. And yes.
I love the games in this movie because that's not the first time games will be played on Mike.
No. And at first, something seems to grab it, and then he removes his hand unharmed. Later, Jody, all right, fixing my mistake, this is the older brother of Mike.
Yeah.
He is seduced by the lady in lavender and taken to the cemetery to get it on, just like Tommy. And
Tommy's watching, kind of like very voyeuristic,
yes,
which is kind of creepy itself.
Yep. But they're interrupted by Mike, who is, thankfully, he was there to,
thankfully,
foil the good time because,
thankfully the dwarf freaked the hell out of Mike.
Yeah,
made him scream and holler to stop Jody from getting it on with the tall man. In theory, which is very interesting. Go ahead. Sorry, I don't mean to keep interrupting.
So they, so he interrupts it. He tries to tell him about the dwarf, the figure, the hooded figure, and Jody dismisses him. At the mausoleum, Mike is chased by our first look at the sphere.
Yes, which is a cool weapon, man.
And he kills a caretaker, which we really get to see how devastating this little silver ball can be.
Well, and that's why I say this movie has a little bit of body snatcher in it, because that caretaker guy looked a lot. He had the Bela Lugosi kind of look from Body Snatcher, didn't he? A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, kind of. So the sphere begins chasing Mike, and
ducks at the last minute.
Ducks at the last minute. Gets the caretaker. He flees the tall man, slamming the door to get away, which the tall man's fingers get caught and crushed, and instead of red blood coming from his now missing fingers, we got yellow.
Yeah.
So something's a little weird about our tall man here.
A little. Yeah.
Still, I mean, the fingers are still moving as Mike and Jody flee.
Right.
They go to the sheriff, and one of the fingers turns into a flying insect.
Yeah, it's very strange.
We're going from horror to now more supernatural.
Yeah.
Sci-fi type.
A little bit of a fly influence, maybe?
Yeah. So they go to the sheriff. They get their buddy Reggie. He joins the fun. Yeah, and so now they're back at the cemetery. They're getting chased by the dwarves. I mean, in a driverless hearse. I mean, it turns
wild
into
and crazy movie.
Total chaos, Chris.
Right. It also, it's like a couple years prior. There's this Japanese film. It has nothing to do with Phantasm. But did you ever see the movie House?
Yes.
Which is like, okay, it's a coming of age movie. Is it, or is it a drama dealing with family, or is it a horror movie with all of the supernatural stuff goes in there? Is it a comedy? Is it a musical? It's everything, and Phantasm has a little bit of everything as well. Because it's all over the place. Mm-hmm. It's just, you get used to one type of setting in Phantasm, and then boom, a driverless hearse, but come to find out a little dwarf was driving it, and it turned out to be Tommy, which is interesting, the older brother.
Right.
So it's like, what the heck is he doing to make they never explain it. Probably a good thing that they never explain it, but somehow he takes a regular sized human being, 5 foot something, makes them into 3 foot something zombie dwarfs. That's all. That's a hooded zombie dwarfs. That's the only conclusion I can come up with. And thankfully, Don never explains it.
No,
he never explains it.
I mean, I'm sorry. Where else are you going to find one of the heroes driving an ice cream truck?
Killer Clowns? But that's more of a sci-fi. That's a decade later.
Yeah, but still, I mean, that's pretty badass. One of our heroes is an ice cream truck driver.
Thankfully, they didn't play any. Remember in Killer Clowns, they played the cheesy music and everything. Thankfully, they didn't do that. But I like how he says, you don't put the body, is it going to like melt on the ice cream? Oh man.
So yeah, I mean,
because there is some humor in this movie. A lot of people don't, it's
a dark
overlook
humor.
It. Yeah, it's very dark and twisted humor, but it is in there,
Mm-hmm. So I'm going forward. Jody goes to the cemetery alone and is chased away by the dwarf, seemingly driverless hearse. He is rescued by Mike and Jody's Plymouth Barracuda. Well, a little bit more superhero type ride than an ice cream truck, but
it's a cool car, by the way.
Yes, it is. So running the hearse off the road, they discover it was driven by one of the hooded dwarfs, and as you pointed to, the reanimated, shrunken Tommy is now riding along with Reggie in the ice cream truck. Reggie and Jody resolve to defeat the tall man while Mike is hidden in an antique store owned by Jody's friend Sally and Sue. There, Mike discovers an old photograph of the tall man and insists on taking it home. On the way, Mike, Sally, and Sue, they come across the ice cream truck overturned, and they then are attacked by the dwarfs, the hooded dwarfs. Mike manages to escape, assuming the girls and Reggie are dead. Jody goes to the mausoleum to kill the tall man, first locking Mike in his bedroom safely. Mike escapes by running into the tall man who is waiting for him outside the front door. He kidnaps Mike in the hearse. Mike then escapes, causes the hearse to strike a pole and explode. Looking for Jody in the mausoleum, Mike is targeted by the silver sphere again until Jody destroys it with a shotgun. Mike and Jody then reunite with Reggie, and together they in a brightly lit room, which is filtered with canisters containing more dwarfs. Mike catches a brief glimpse of the portal and seeing a red, hot world where the dwarves are trolling as slaves.
And none of this really makes sense.
Yeah.
You notice how nothing is really making sense?
Yeah, it's like, we have dwarfs, killer dwarfs, a killer tall man, a killer sphere, and now we have another dimension.
Yeah, another dimension that's never really explained. And you miss something with the photograph. The photograph comes alive, and the tall man is looking at him. Yeah, it looks like it's a picture from several decades prior. So it looks like an old picture.
Right.
But the tall man's been around for a while.
So, after a sudden power outage, the trio are left alone in the room. Reggie activates the portal and creates a powerful vacuum in which they narrowly escape. The ensuing storm, Reggie is stabbed by the lady in lavender while Jody and Mike flee the mausoleum that vanishes. So, Spielberg took a little influence from Poltergeist,
Yeah. Well, a lot of people. There's a big debate about Poltergeist. We'll talk about that at some point because there's some people that swear that that Spielberg directed it, but it's like, well, Tobe Hooper got the credit,
right?
So it's like, who directed?
Yeah,
gotta love these online debates. But yeah, all I could think of is like, what was that cheesy Eddie Murphy movie, The Haunted House or something?
Haunted Mansion.
The Haunted Mansion. Yeah. Well, there's also an animated film. It had nothing to do with it. I got the two movies confused. There's this animated movie made 15 years ago called The Haunted House, and the house just disappears into the ground. You wonder if that kind of...
Yeah. Doesn't the same thing happen like Amityville Horror, one of the sequels?
Yeah, that's a movie I just never understood why people liked it, you know.
All right, well, we'll talk. Yeah, that's a different podcast.
Same year, though.
Yeah. All right, so the mausoleum vanishes. Jody devises a plan to trap the tall man in an abandoned mine shaft. We have a mine shaft now. The tall man attacks Mike at his home, chases him outside where he eventually falls into the mine shaft and is buried under an avalanche of rocks triggered by Jody. After this, Mike wakes up in his bed still worried about the tall man. Reggie, still alive, tells Mike that he has had a nightmare. Jody died in a car wreck and proposes a road trip. So
you see, like when I mention it, you see a real flash where Jody's gravestone. You see that he died. It's like, when did he die? You know, it's very weird. It's like everything comes at you like really fast, and you really need to like okay, slow down just a tad, slow down, because it just comes at you. It comes out of nowhere, and it's like, all right, well, Jody died. Okay, here's the gravestone. Okay, boom. Now we're on to the next.
Right. And so as Mike goes back to his bedroom and starts packing for their road trip to, get out of Dodge, we get probably the most iconic shot of the movie, one of the best jump scares in horror history, where the tall man appears in the window, in the mirror of his bedroom. He screams, the iconic boy, and crashes through the mirror, pulling Mike inside. Right. And we cut to credits. Chris, I don't know how you do it every episode, but reading the plot synopsis sucks.
Well, I try to memorize a good chunk of it. So, but the plot really makes no sense. I mean, if you could read it to us several thousand times, it's funny, but it makes no sense. It just makes no sense. I mean, yes, there's a lot to do with death and grieving, you know, but neither you or I have ever been in a situation when we were young, our parents died, our siblings die, and you're all by yourself. And you've got support, but it's not the same. So I don't know how this happened, because from what I understand, Don didn't have siblings like die.
Right.
His parents were still alive at the time of making this movie. So, he had a nightmare. Mm-hmm. But I don't know how anyone would react, but creating a tall man to try to deal with your own grief, I guess people... I look at Pan's Labyrinth. That one is... that's probably one of the more contemporary films that deals with how a child deals with grief.
Right.
Because in that movie, she creates this fantasy world with fawns and everything like that to escape from the brutality of her life. I mean, she does have a mom, but she's kind of married to this brutal dictator type leader of the army. It's different setting, different, situations, that's the Spanish Civil War. But, she's dealing with these atrocities. She's dealing with a lot of tragedy in her life, so she creates this own world. Mm-hmm. And apparently Mike has a discombobulated world that he creates with the tall man and different dimensions where zombie hooded dwarfs kill people and are family members that have been shrunken down a few feet, and they're slaves in some dimension.
Right.
It's really complicated. It's just one of those movies. Just watch. Don't think too hard. But there's so much analysis of what this movie is about because people want to know what it's about.
Right.
So you have like Angus Scrimm himself. He's literally quoted, gives expression to all of the boys' insecurities and fears. He states that the theme of loss and how about like fantasizing about death, if you will, that's how he deals with the deaths of his family. Coscarelli identifies it as a predominantly male story. We were talking about it, that the audience is for young preteen boys. And they somehow gravitated to it. So very interesting. I love the fact that both Angus and Don have stated that the tall man wins in the end because dreams are the only place where death can be defeated.
Yes.
Yeah, as we've seen multiple times in
take on
Freddy Krueger movies,
Well, I mean, even, again, you talk about, a dreams just having impact. Nightmare on Elm Street is the perfect example of that. Wes Craven had a good, just like Don here, very normal, very good, upbringing, good life. I mean,
right.
He makes Last House on the Left. He's a professor in Utica in upstate New York.
Mm-hmm. But let's not forget, Last House on the Left was inspired by an Ingmar Bergman film. Same plot.
What I'm saying is that's, he gets the credit of being this horrible. He didn't, he just made these movies. And Nightmare on Elm Street was literally just a random dream he had.
Right.
And a little scare he had as a kid seeing a guy outside his house.
Right.
So, I mean, my point, I guess, being is you don't really have to have a troubled childhood just to have a really messed up dream that works out for you
right
in the movies.
Right. Well, that's there's a lot of filmmakers that Wong Kar-wai, Hong Kong filmmaker, always troubled love lives and loners, and he's been happily married for years to his high school sweetheart.
Yeah.
It's interesting where all these ideas come from, but we're grateful to Don.
Well, and that's and that just goes to the show. I think it was I want to say it was either Robert Englund or Nev Campbell said first time meeting Wes Craven, they're like, we were expecting to meet Satan himself, and in walked this guy who was wearing everything from the L.L. Bean catalog.
Right.
And,
very soft-spoken.
Very soft-spoken and down to earth.
You think of the guy who created Phantasm as this weird-looking dude, but he's just got beard, glasses, just a normal guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, very happy guy. I mean, I mentioned it earlier. His father and his mom pretty much funded the whole movie.
Yeah.
His mom made all the dresses, and I mean, he not only produced, directed, wrote the film, but he edited, shot the film. So, I mean, it's just before Robert Rodriguez did everything.
Yeah.
Don Coscarelli did,
So let's talk about Angus Scrimm for a second.
Because you brought up something. We were just talking randomly, and he did a lot of the linear notes and albums. Is that what you're saying?
All right. So he his early career, he was a journalist and writer.
Okay. So
he graduated from the University of Southern California, and from there he went on. He would write and edited TV Guide, Cinema Magazine, the Los Angeles Herald, and then he went on to write lighter notes for, get this, Chris, artists from Frank Sinatra to the Beatles.
Wow.
I mean, he won a Grammy for his liner notes on the album Korngold, the classic Eric Wolfgang Korngold. Yeah, I mean... from 1974. And then he went on to become our beloved tall man that our horror community knows him as. But, I mean, can you imagine being responsible for the liner notes for the Beatles at Capitol Records?
Right. That's pretty cool.
I mean, I think anytime you can... someone has the honor to be able to attach their names in some official capacity to the Beatles, right. You're legit.
So you've obviously read about Angus, because you've read the book about this. Mm-hmm. What got him into acting? Because he was only in like one other movie before this, and the only reason why he got the role as the tall man is because of a certain look he gave the boy in the previous film that Don did.
Yes. Oh, well, I mean, let's just say, like, he had, been in several supporting roles in the early 70s.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it sounds like he was dabbling in film as he was working as a writer he was in California. I mean, I think everybody, if you're in the business, you kind of, dabble in just a little bit about everything.
I love the titles for some of these movies he's uncredited in. The Severed Arm, Sweet Kill, Scream Bloody Murder, A Piece of the Action. And then along comes Phantasm, and boom, he becomes like a huge cult icon.
A horror icon, yeah.
Yeah.
And again, obviously his bread and butter was his writing career. So, I mean, he literally did these movies for fun.
Yeah.
And
you could tell he had fun doing it.
And he was enjoying it, yeah.
Yeah.
And, I think The Tall Man, for what it's worth, is in the horror villain lineage, is one of the scariest because, again, we had Michael Myers by that time, the walking, stalking, like, he chases Mike. Like, he's like legit trying to kill Mike in this movie.
He's running.
And that's
he's
scary.
Driving. And,
yeah.
I mean, he's doing all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And I love how he doesn't speak that much, but when he speaks, it's like, the funeral's ready to begin, sir.
Yeah. Yeah.
Boy.
I mean, he had the voice,
Yes, he did. Yes, he did. But yeah, I mean, he wasn't in a lot of movies, but all of them were, Wishmaster was another. I've heard of Wishmaster. He did that in the 90s. But yeah, he was in all 5 of the Phantasm movies, including the last one, Ravager. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's a very interesting career. So you read the book, Adam. What other interesting notes did you find when you read the book?
It's just, Chris, more of what we've been talking about. It's just how you can't really talk about this movie with just constantly acknowledging that this was such a low budget, but it looks so freaking good. Again, the mausoleum that is just beautiful to look at as they're walking around was literally one hallway. Mm-hmm. I mean, they go to the local Home Depot or Lowe's. They find this cheap marble-looking wallpaper or what, and they just tack it up on some walls, and you just have this incredible-looking mausoleum. The book I am talking about, for those of you who are interested, it's called Phantasm Exhumed. It's the unauthorized companion. And what these authors did, and these are 2 of my favorite authors from when it comes to reading about these horror movies. It's from Dustin McNeil, and he's got a whole bunch of books on different movies, but his first one was this Phantasm companion. And, he's talking to Don, he's talking to Angus, he's talking to all the... So he compiles interviews with all the cast and crew and gives you a nice guide of following how they made the movies. He has a sequel one to the sequel of the Phantasms movies.
Really?
Yeah. So he's done 2 books on the Phantasm movies. He's also, as we go forward with the podcast, he's done 2 on the Halloween series. One's called Taking Shape.
I can see why he's your favorite author.
Well, he really does a great job.
You
with these.
jab me, so I got to get my jabs.
No, I'm just saying because he does a really good job with these. So he's got Taking Shape 1, which is about the franchise that we have up until Halloween 2018, and then he's got Taking Shape 2, which is all the rejected drafts and movies that never made it to production. Right. But he's also got one on the history of Freddy vs. Jason. He's got one on he's got one on the Child's Play series, and probably my most favorite one is he's got a story on Jaws the Ride, the history of Jaws the Ride.
Really?
And the nightmare that was. That is a fascinating read.
Interesting.
But so he does a fantastic job with Phantasm. I have both of the books. I've read them. And again,
have you seen any of the sequels?
I have not seen any of the sequels.
Yeah, it's from what I'm reading here. There's like alternate cuts of the film.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. Like, this goes all the way back to the Laserdisc days. There's like a separate section with one deleted scene struck from what appears to be a work print. There's no music or sound. There's like very little sound on it. And it's basically Mike telling Jody about weird things he's witnessed at the cemetery. And then Jody gets Mike drunk. He gets his, I could probably see why it's cut. That's kind of controversial, getting a 13-year-old drunk. But then takes him to Reggie's ice cream parlor where they start a food fight. Then it cuts to where Jody stops by the bank where he works and visits his girlfriend. So all these subplots left on the floor, and I can see why some of them, it's like, that really doesn't help the main focus of the movie, because Mike is the main character.
Yeah.
And, but the movie has a problem where sometimes it focuses too much on Jody and not on Mike. So it's like, when it's on Mike, it seems to be more interesting. Mm-hmm. But, and then, we talked about they're 3 hours in length, and they speculate that most of the footage, is unnecessary. I mean, we just talked about that one deleted scene, which is on the DVD I have too. Mm-hmm. That deleted scene, and there's also a 5.1 stereo surround sound remix on the Blu-ray.
Interesting.
Has new sound effects like gunshots, explosions, background ambience such as wind noises. There's not a lot of gunshots. I mean, there's a few when when Jody goes on a shooting spree, but other than that, I mean, there's not a lot of gunshots, but just making up gunshot sounds and stuff, explosions, interesting. And then there's I guess back in the late 90s, they re-released Phantasm on VHS. It had that newly remastered stereo soundtrack. Also, the movie featured 4 minutes of scenes cut from the movie. It has like the first, Mike entering into a room with 2 coffins. One is open and a body is inside. The other is closed, but Mike hears sounds from inside and thinks it's Reggie. Tries to open it, but I don't know. And I guess the cable TV version has a extra text in the credits that reads, "Enter the tall man's mausoleum if you dare." So the second deleted scene on that VHS thing, Mike and Jody run into the tall man in the funeral home. Jody shoots the tall man several times. Have you seen any of this? Or?
No.
Interesting. Obviously, it has no effect on the tall man. He then knocks Mike onto the floor, picks up Jody by the neck with one hand. Mike sees a fire extinguisher, remembers when the tall man reacted badly when he passed by Reggie's ice cream truck with its refrigerator open. Mike realizes the tall man can be hurt by the cold, so he takes out the fire extinguisher and blasts the tall man with it as he is about to kill Jody. The tall man withers in pain, suddenly screams, and his head explodes, splattering yellow blood all over the walls. I don't know why that was cut.
I don't know why that was cut either.
Interesting. So like, literally, we were talking about killer clowns. Fast forward a decade later, like, the cold kills the clowns.
Yeah.
Oh, man. What a crazy movie this is. But, man, oh, man. Now, there's several other deleted scenes that can be seen in Phantasm 4, apparently. The tall man rope hanging sequence. There's another deleted scene. Mike in bed talking to his brother Jody about the tall man with a reference to the rope hanging sequence. There's another deleted scene that is also in Phantasm 4. It's the arrival scene. So it looks like some of the deleted scenes ended up into the fourth movie, which is interesting. I've never seen any of the other movies. I've really had no want to. But this deleted scene that's also in 4 is Jody and Mike driving down a country road. Jody waves to a little boy with his dog on the side of the road. And as Jody and Mike drive off from the opposite direction, the tall man's hearse rips onto the road. The little boy's dog runs out into the road. The boy calls the dog back, but it's too late. The tall man runs over. I can see why they deleted that because, well, showing a dog die is never a good thing in movies.
Right.
There's another scene cut from this that's also in 4. They call it Just the Wind. Mike is walking down one of the town streets at night. Reggie's ice cream truck stops next to him. Mike sees Reggie, jumps in. As they drive, Reggie hears something. He asks Mike if he heard it. Mike just replies, "It's just the wind." Reggie nods. They drive off. We see the taillight fade off into the darkness. Now, I guess I haven't listened to the commentary on the DVD, but Coscarelli mentions a couple of deleted scenes that do not appear in any release version. That's Jody's girlfriend and a couple of other scenes. Mike is running near the end. He originally ran into a web with a large bug. Coscarelli decided the bug looked too phony, so it was deleted.
Wow.
No more phony than the flying insect.
Yeah.
And I guess there was a mix-up while transferring the film to video because VHS, the early VHS prints, were missing part of the scene where Michael, Jody, and Reggie are in the dimensional doorway room when the lights go out. Originally, the scene had them arguing, Michael lighting a lighter, and he and Jody running when they see a dwarf accidentally leaving Reggie behind. Now, the mistaken version has the scene jump from the lights going out to where Jody is searching for Michael outside, completely throwing off its continuity. Like, Reggie's forgotten about, apparently, in that one. But it's just interesting that, it's all these alternate versions that are on home video.
Yeah.
And I have the Anchor Bay DVD, which I, got from Blockbuster back in the, buy like 3 for $13.99 or whatever it was. Remember those days?
Yeah.
You could buy all those used DVDs. That's how I got my copy of Phantasm. When did you first watch it, Adam?
Oh, man. Had to have been sometime in the early 2000s. Again,
That's when I watched it, too.
Yeah, probably. I have to imagine it was in the pile of movies that I was discovering. As I was venturing into my love of horror and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Just a couple other things I want to mention about that's really incredible about Don Coscarelli, man.
Yeah.
Age 19, his first movie, Jim, the World's Greatest.
Yeah.
He is the youngest director to ever have a feature film distributed by a major studio, which was Universal Pictures.
Yeah.
He does this at 19 years old. What were you doing at 19 years old?
I was in college.
Yeah, and I was a senior in high school. So, this guy's getting his movie distributed by Universal Studios.
Yeah, and that
incredible.
That was, it's like Orson Welles. Everyone brags about Orson Welles because he had like full reign.
Yeah,
and I don't think anyone's ever had full reign over a movie, especially their film debut, right out of the starting gate because of what Orson Welles, the genius he was, did. Imagine if, like, say Don had free reign. Imagine what he would have done, because this movie's wild and crazy as it is.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, we get Phantasm, and again another,
because Angus was in
all of them.
Yeah,
and he wrote and directed all of them, which is another very unique thing. Especially,
he was in that Jim Against the World movie.
Angus was, yeah, and that's where the connection, comes
that's where it
from.
started. Yeah.
But Don, he would go on to do all the sequels.
Yeah,
the last one being in 2016.
Right.
So that's rare, because usually you might get the original writer or director get one or two. If it's a big franchise, they might come back a couple sequels later. Phantasm is his baby all the way around. But then he would also go on to do another cult classic, The Beastmaster.
Well, he co-wrote that.
Yeah. And
he also one of my favorite. It's not like a favorite, but it's definitely an interesting watch. Have you seen Bubba Hotep?
I was literally just about to mention Bubba Hotep is
have you seen
probably
that?
his most successful movie.
It is
he's ever made, and I have seen it, and it's So,
we got to talk about that movie sometime.
Yeah, we'll put that on the list.
That's definitely Coscarelli movie. And I don't know if this, getting back to I know we're kind of jumping all over the place here, but in Australia, this is interesting. They had to release Phantasm under a different title.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's called The Never Dead because there was a softcore porn film called Phantasm with an F.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah, and I guess back in late 2015, Coscarelli showed a work-in-progress 4K resolution restoration of Phantasm called Phantasm Remasters at some sort of film festival. It was supervised by Don at Bad Robot, which J.J. Abrams was a huge fan of the series. It's interesting how J.J. Abrams really hasn't, if he was so influenced, it doesn't show in J.J. Abrams' work, that's for sure.
Right.
I mean, we're not going to go too far into J.J. Abrams, but Coscarelli told J.J. that he did not have a high-quality print, but Abrams volunteered the use of his technicians for a restoration, and they completed it in March of 2016. So, and I guess it was released in theaters. I mean, where the heck? It didn't come to Albany, that's for sure.
Right.
So, but very interesting how this film, like it got open to mixed reviews, but yet it made like $22 million.
In a $300,000 budget.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And
it's very interesting.
You know, again, for those of you, just another quick side note, for those of you who like to read like I do, Don Coscarelli also did publish his own memoir in 2018 called True Indie, The Life and Death of Filmmaking. We
mentioned this has become a cult film, and, you know, it's been, obviously, the cult movies do even better years later. I mean, again, this was a huge success. It more than made the money back on it.
But it is so popular, Chris.
Yeah.
You can't go to a horror convention and not see the Sphere or the Tall Man anywhere, you know, whether it's through merchandise, fan art, cosplay. The Phantasm is always around.
Right.
You know, it's one of those just iconic movies and franchises that people just love and can't get enough of.
Right. And it's, even though it's got one of the craziest plots of all time, and again, you and I could read the plot to each other over and over again and it still wouldn't make any sense, but man, it's fun to watch.
But that's just it, you know. And sometimes the plot doesn't have to make 100. Well, if you still enjoy it by the end of the day, you know. Probably
the most outlandish and the borderlines on avant-garde in a way is David Lynch's movies. Mm-hmm. He's one of the rare directors where I can't tell you what the movie is about really, but it's like Mulholland Drive, Blue Velvet, Lost Highway especially. I can revisit those movies over and over again.
Right.
And Eraserhead as well. And Eraserhead, you know, the weird, zany plots, one wonders if Don wasn't partially influenced by Eraserhead in a way, too.
Sure.
Have you ever seen that?
I have seen Eraserhead.
I love it. Like an interviewer asked David Lynch, now, you said that Eraserhead's your most spiritual film. Would you like to expand on that? No. He just smiles. Nope.
Nope.
You know, you don't need to explain the art. It's in the movie, but definitely Phantasm, one of the most mind-boggling scenes, and that could be the whole point. I mean, dreams are not like a basic plot. It's all over the place. Dreams have there's no rhyme or reason in a story arc in a dream. They're weird. They don't make sense. And Phantasm kind of, it's basically a dream, or is it? You know, it's never fully explained.
What creative freedom to have no limits or no boundaries, because it is in fact a dream.
Yeah,
I mean, and you see it in a movie like Phantasm,
right?
It's just off the walls, and again, if you make something decent, you know, you don't really have to have a stone cold solid, you know, point A to point B plot.
Right.
You know,
there is, you know, kind of a point A to point B, but it is a lot of weird,
twists and, you know,
a lot of
twists
twists and turns that can't be explained, but dreams can't be explained half the time. I know psychologists could analyze dreams to death, and I know there's plenty of critics that have analyzed Phantasm to death. I'm not going to get into all of their analysis of, this is a dreamlike thing. This has to do with death and grief. Yeah, there's a lot of that in there. There's a little bit of everything in Phantasm.
Right.
So what did you think of the movie Phantasm? Did you see the sequels? What did you think of those? I always forget to do this at the beginning, but comment, subscribe, so you never miss an episode of Scared for Reals. 45 years later, people are still talking just as much about Phantasm as they did back when it first got released.
Still loving it more and more.
Hopefully we'll see. I think there's some limited edition 4Ks that have been released in the past few years from multiple different labels. You might have to import them, but if you're a fan of the movie, it's, I always say, like, if you love a film, you'll probably get multiple versions of it. Like I have several Scorsese editions of movies, and again, like I have 4 copies of Vertigo.
Right.
Yeah. So if you love a movie, you'll get your hands on it as many ways as you can. So Phantasm, 45 years later, still an icon of cult cinema. Tell us what you think about it. Comment below, or again, you can reach out to us. We're on social media, Facebook, Instagram, X. The handle is at Scared for Reals.
We'll see you next time on Scared for Real.